In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we delve into the underserved and marginalized communities and how we'd like to inspire and motivate those that need some help as into what's to do next in their life. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have Dr. King Imani. Dr. King Imani has dedicated his career to fighting for equality and for equity, for equality and inclusion throughout diverse industries. His education includes business management, organizational leadership, and global international management. He has ample experience in employment law, contract law, urban planning and development, operational strategy, corporate cultural sensitivity, and strategic management. He holds a doctorate in management, organizational leadership, an MBA and MED, a Juris Master, and a BA in global management. His dissertation titled Exploring How African American Women Navigate Their Entrepreneur Journeys, an exploratory case study. The research focused on entrepreneurship, access to capital, funding, and adverse challenges faced in establishing and developing a venture business. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. King Imani. Hello, sir. How are you this evening?
I'm well, and yourself?
I am excellent. Thanks for being on the show.
No problem, no problem. I look forward to speaking with you.
Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we delve into the show?
No, I think that's good.
Well, let's start here with the your career in organizational leadership. Can you tell our audience what motivated you to pursue a career in organizational leadership?
I most certainly can. My motivation stemmed from a desire to make a tangible impact on organizations by shaping their culture and strategic direction. I've always believed that effective leadership is essential to achieving both organizational success and individual success. And so that kind of catapulted me into that direction.
Okay. And so, but with that, was that from like personal experience, or is that just something that you just saw the need to do?
It's something that I just saw the need to do. Growing up, I never liked my name being King, but it gave me, I guess, a passion and a desire to lead people in a way, in a very humble way. A lot of people think, oh, I'm getting big headed or something about it, but that's never been the case. I actually never was called King growing up. I hated that name. But coming into myself, I found that I had some leadership qualities, and I just dove into it. And organizational leadership was the precipice to that.
So, what leadership qualities do you believe are most critical for success today?
Great question. Vision, empathy, adaptability, communication. Those are all essential qualities I feel and believe help nurturing and navigating complex and diverse environments. I think that if you don't have that, you're not going anywhere as a leader, honestly.
Mm-hmm. So then, the old age question that I remember as I was a kid, is, do you believe leaders are natural, born, or made?
Wow, that is actually a very good question. I remember when I embarked upon my doctoral journey, that was a question that was asked of us a lot. And obviously, there's no right or wrong answer, but I honestly feel that leaders are born. You can make somebody into a leader, but I feel like with that, you're still going to be missing some of the essential qualities or things in which can't be nurtured or developed, things that just have to be innate. So I honestly believe that leaders should be born.
How do you approach leading diverse teams effectively?
I emphasize inclusivity by valuing each team member's perspective. I think that it's important to value all thought partners in a situation. And I also believe that in order to make a decision, it has to be a team effort. And so I feel that when you're leading diverse teams effectively, you also have to listen and garner all of the support necessary to move the needle.
Mm. So just as you did, well, I guess you had to build your team. What are some of the qualities that you were looking for in team members in building a team?
I look for natural born leaders for sure. I look for people who are not afraid to say the thing that most people won't say. I look for people that kind of stand out, and even those that kind of die off into the back sometimes too. Honestly, I have a very easygoing, kind of natural way of going about things when I'm looking for leaders or team members. And I classify them as leaders. I never classify them as team members because I feel that everybody, leads in their own right. But what I attempt to look for is just innate abilities, whether it be somebody who's good at computers or somebody who's well-rounded or versed on, readings or, just always has the answer. And whatever that answer is or whatever that person is great at, I find that some way, somehow, just by having a very casual conversation. It's never formal.
So, where are some of the places that you normally recruit people when you're team building? How do you recruit?
You know what? It's crazy. I have such a, a large and broad network of individuals in which I consult with and just talk to on a regular, whether they're associates or personal friends, to the point where I really don't look far nowadays. I literally go onto my phone or put out a text message or an email to my network, and they kind of send them my way. And people know who I am. I'm always king every time you meet me, so you don't want to get anything different. And I'm lucky, I guess, in that aspect. And I don't believe in luck, but I guess in that sense, I am pretty lucky because I never really have to search far.
So, what are some of the most significant challenges you faced as a leader?
Ooh, managing conflict and navigating resistance
Oh,
to change.
wow.
Um, People are afraid of change. It doesn't matter how long someone's been doing something. You could have been doing it for 5 minutes or 50 years. People are afraid of change. And managing that and navigating that, I have to always find the balance. And for me, that's difficult at times because it kind of bends me in ways that I probably would dislike or go against if, in fact, I had an option to choose differently. But balancing diverse viewpoints while steering the team has to probably be the most difficult. But I find a camaraderie and I establish a common ground for us all, and we go from there.
So, and just thinking about that, and when you think about the pushback that you get, as you were mentioning, like normally, what are some of the things that when you get that pushback? What are some of the things that have been put out that that you're expecting that you get the pushback from?
When most pushback that I get, because I'm pretty diplomatic, um, the most pushback that I've received is when I inherit a team of individuals and we're changing some system or policy that they have been functioning literally, and I say functioning in a very casual way, because not productive in my eyes. And the company brought me in more times than most to assist with transitioning that out because it wasn't, it wasn't great. But I get a lot of pushback there because people are afraid to learn new things. And honestly, some people are so used to and immune to doing things how they're doing. I don't want to say wrong, but doing how they're doing it to the point where they are fearful of having to learn something new, especially when a new person comes into, the mode and you have to, wow them. I tell people, you don't have to wow me, just do your jobs and we'll all be great. And I think that being as diplomatic and easygoing as I am, that has benefited me because it's only a little resistance at first, but I get in there and roll up my sleeves and, do the work with them. So I think it makes it a little bit easier.
So, as our audience is listening tonight, and let's just say we have some folk out there that are kind of like on the fence of maybe having the inabilities maybe to learn as there's a new process, or have the inability to like not even wanting to do a new process. What are some of the things that you can advise them on as to what can make things a little bit easier and better for them?
Well, I was brought up, my grandmother used to always say, when I would leave home or go and do something that was different, she would say, you can always come back home. And so when I'm advising organizations or companies or people in general, I tell them, you can always go back home. Whatever that home base is, you can always go back there. But don't be afraid to do better, be better, and see better. If in fact you, I guess, stunt your growth in some ways, I like to classify that as you'll never know the true potential of what's there. So you have to just go at it. And honestly, you can't be afraid to take risk in business. And I always tell people that all the time. They always saying scared money doesn't make money, and it doesn't get promotions either. So you can't be afraid to go at it.
Right. So how do you define transformational leadership in your work?
Transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is about inspiring and motivating others to exceed their potential. My job as a leader is to help them find that or source whatever light they need within themselves to do that. It's about driving change and modeling integrity and supporting individuals' growth. And I think as a leader, that is what I try or attempt to do effortlessly, at all turns. And I think that's important and crucial for any leader to ensure that they're looking or sifting through that to make sure that happens.
And so when you but when you think of transformational leadership, and let's say you've got these folk that you're trying to mold and you're trying to make them into this individual that they have the capabilities of doing. What are some of the things that are some of the tools that you use when it comes to transformational leadership that you implement to help them to be better?
I like to say that I'm a people's person. So I try to foster a culture of creativity and shared purpose. And honestly, that's truly the only tools that I use. As I'm thinking back and reflecting on things, I've gained buy-in so easily from people over time from being the caliber of leader that I am, and not to, boost my ego or anything like that. But I am a hands-on leader. I'm not a desk person. Sitting here at this desk right now is like, oh, it's for a great cause, let me do it. But I'm not a desk leader. And so I truly get out there and foster that creativity and look for all the things in which people didn't know they had within themselves, ever. And I help nurture those things and we master them together. And honestly, those are the tools that I always stoop down and look for to help move the needle.
Well, it definitely seems like, for you being the leader that you are, you definitely have like a very cool, level-headed, this even keel personality that it's got to seem like it's kind of like an accepting thing for and easy for people to work with you. So has anyone ever just not been able to, I guess you call it, got a good read from that kind of vibe?
You know what? Over time, when people see my name on papers or when I'm introduced via email or something without a picture or anything, people are like, actually, my last job, and she's one of my best friends now. I won't say her name. She'll probably cringe. Um, she said that she made it up in her mind not to like me. When she saw me on paper, she was like, "Oh no, I'm not doing this." But when they meet me, it was almost like an instant friendship. I mean, we used to be together endlessly when we worked at the same company, and now
Right.
we still talk. If she goes out of the country, she'll call me. You know, wherever she is, we always talk, and she'll send me these things all throughout the day, like on Instagram and stuff. You know, when your work friend becomes your best friend, and so it's really great to know that. But she had it set in her head that she was not going to like me. I can tell you that, and she's not the first person, but she was just the most direct. She told me
Right.
that the first day.
Oh wow.
Okay.
So, so what advice would you give to aspiring organizational leaders?
Whew. Oh, it's crazy just to think that I'm in a position to give advice to anybody sometimes. I laugh at that, knowing where I come from. But focus on continuous learning, build emotional intelligence, be authentic. Um, Leading is truly about the people. And as long as you're always your authentic self and you gain that buy-in at the beginning, don't, try to be firm or hard or anything like that, or try to implement or change all these things. Just go in and remember that human behavior is essential to you staying true to your values, and it's essential to inspiring others.
Hmm. So, something that you mentioned prior to, you giving that wonderful response. When you mentioned, from like where you come from, I mean, like, can you tell us how did that come about?
When you say how did that come about,
You coming from the humble beginnings to where you are now, like, how did that story materialize to get you to Dr. King Imani today?
you know what? I was raised by a single parent. And it's crazy because I never say that I come from humble beginnings or anything like that. I was fortunate to have two parents. Although my mom was a single parent, I was fortunate enough to have two parents that believed in education. And I like to say now the main thing in which my parents agreed on was that education was never optional. That was their parenting tool, and they used it to their advantage. All of my siblings, we have an education. My sister, my older sister, she started it off. She has 2 or 3 masters and a doctorate. Um, my mom made things fun for us. She never pushed us to doing anything in particular. Whatever we wanted to do, she stood behind us and made sure that we mastered it. She was always that ear to listen or that helping hand. And honestly, I don't know life any other way because that's all that I know and that's what I came from. And so it's my story, and I hate talking about myself, honestly, but it's now so easy for me to do it because it helps people in whatever ways in which they internalize it. It's helped them. So if I can do that, that's a line with my purpose, and I just love to do it now.
I
So,
appreciate you taking the time to really answer that question because just at this point in time, as you mentioned, education. We don't know what the education system is going to look like here in the near future. But just as we think about it for people that look like you and I, where it's a very strong foundational thing for you. The whole premise of that is to like what can we do at this point, just jumping off this for a little bit, what is it that we can do from an educational perspective to continue to inspire and motivate the young men and women that look like you and I?
that is a phenomenal question. And I say that because I have a business partner. We have a company. It's called Academics Only Please. And it is a company that we developed in 2020 when we were both writing our dissertation or finishing our dissertations. and we were having lunch, and we knew that, the generation now, they were or are not brought up the same way in which we are. They don't think that education is essential, and they hear all these different fads and things and news about going into debt over education. I am a firm believer that when you know better, you do better, and it doesn't have to be fun, but it should be necessary, because you have to have something to fall back on or lean into when times get rough, or when you're trying to understand and comprehend the complexities of the world we live in currently.
Right.
If you don't have the fundamental aspects or things needed to, understand, then you're not going to get too far. And luck and all the other stuff that people might or may not believe in, that's fine. But you have to have a foundation. And I feel that education is that foundation. Now, do I believe in going into debt over all these things? No, but work hard, get scholarships, whatever you can, write essays, whatever, get something to move yourself on that train to wherever you're going.
So can you share an example of a time when your leadership approach created a lasting impact?
Oh, so many. But in a previous role, I led a team through a cultural transformation. And it improved the employee retention and engagement tremendously. And it's crazy because the way in which we were going to measure it initially was not the way in which we measured it in conclusion of everything in which I was brought in to do. But this measurement was the most crucial aspect of measurement for them, because they had such high turnover and retention issues. But by focusing on transparent communication styles and general and genuine feedback, we achieved a 70% retention rate for the company, and it was astronomical to them. But I'm like, well, you guys did the work. You guys had the tools the whole time. You just need to learn how to use them. And it was something that I've leaned on endlessly up until this point. And the company, they rat and rave about me still, and I still call whenever they need somebody to come in and do whatever. Even if I'm not the primary person, they call me to source the primary person. I left a lasting impression, and I love that for them and myself, actually.
So how has your understanding of leadership evolved over your career?
You know what? Initially, I saw leadership as mainly like decision making and like an authoritarian, position. Over time, I've come to realize that leadership it's more of a collaborative effort, or process rather, and it requires you to really truly go in and wrap your arms around whatever it is that you're essentially trying to lead. Whether it's a product or employees, staff, associates, whatever, you have to find your footing, and you have to ground yourself in that.
So a term you mentioned before, emotional leadership. Can you tell us, what role does emotional intelligence play in leadership?
It's at the core of effective leadership. It allows leaders to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. And honestly, if you don't have emotional intelligence, you can't manage people, because people are emotional. And as personal or as strict as I used to be on, leave your problems at the door when you come in, you got to get to work. We can't, the company isn't paying or spending money, to resolve or solve our issues. I've come to realize that my EI has gone up tremendously over time from understanding people and understanding that behaviors are going to happen, and you have to have emotional intelligence to manage those things.
Can I ask you this, and just to help, I think our audience understand a little bit more. When you mentioned emotional intelligence, can you tell us, how does that intersect with critical thinking?
If those two things don't coincide, they will collide. Um, um, intersect. They have to meet. They have to meet. One
Okay.
without the other is null and void. You have to have a certain level of emotional intelligence to critically think, critically believe, critically read, critically go throughout your day. You
Mhm.
have to have emotional intelligence to understand or comprehend the fundamentals of what's necessary and needed to move from point A to point B to point C, and
Mhm.
D, E, F if you need to as well. If you
Mhm.
don't have that, I don't think that you're going too far.
Mhm. So, so when you think about just a lot of people in general, especially from a leadership perspective, um, do you think that, well, can you give us your opinion that if you don't have good critical thinking skills, then should you be considered a leader, or is that not going to make that possible at all?
My opinion. um, that is one thing that I spoke on earlier. Well, something that came to mind. If you don't have critical thinking abilities,
Mhm.
that's something that you can't really nurture or garner. In my opinion, you kind of have to have that innately to, you know, get across the bridge.
Mhm.
Um, And I think that's honestly one of the biggest issues with nepotism sometimes. When you put people in these positions to lead or function in whatever capacity they are functioning in, you're incapable of succeeding in that because you don't know how to critically think sometimes, or you lack bits and pieces of emotional intelligence that should not lack. And unfortunately, the world goes round, but
So, can you tell us what strategies do you use to foster innovative or innovation within an organization?
hmm. I encourage a culture of experimentation and open dialogue. Um, I provide employees with the autonomy to explore ideals, fail, and learn from mistakes, and foster a mindset of innovation. I think that fosters a mindset of innovation, rather. And as long as they have those key aspects, for me, um, innovation is what's bred from that.
So let me just tell you how I see a little bit of this, and you just kind of like help me to come in the line. Like when I think of innovation, I think more on the lines of, more than just a creative process, but having the ability to pretty much take something and basically make it a masterpiece and create this beautiful, object, scene, characteristics, report, whatever have you, to make it to the point that everybody can see it, they can read it, they can understand it, they can know it, they can love it. And it's something that has a mainstay that can stay as long as they want to until they want to take it to a much higher plane. Does that sound
Agree.
about right?
Agree. It can be timeless or adapt as needed.
Okay. So let's transition over to your advocacy for DEI. And can you tell us what inspired your dedication to advocate for DEI?
You know what? Growing up, I witnessed the impact of inequity firsthand. Well, let me not say that. Every time I am asked something similar to that, I say that I witnessed it firsthand. I didn't experience it. For it didn't happen to me directly. I was never called anything bad or out of my name, whether it be in the household or on the streets. That just didn't happen to me growing up.
Mhm.
But as I moved through my career, I realized from seeing things that happen to other people, um, that I was always an advocate for DEI stuff because I was always hypersensitive to how people felt after those bad things happened to them. And understanding that I had a voice and I was a very direct and forthcoming individual, there was a sense of protection or advocacy, I guess, in that, for lack of a better word, that I took on in those moments. Obviously, I didn't classify it at that time, but as I've grown up, I understood that was a key factor in driving organizational success, and creating environments where everyone can thrive. Me just advocating or being that voice of reason in those times or in those moments has truly been a saving grace throughout my career, even when it's been to my demise.
And so, do you agree with most that when we think about DEI, do you think that that was one of those things that really helped people that look like you and I, or did it not?
I laugh at times when I just think about some of the things that I've heard over the years.
Mm-hmm.
DEI might have been a stepping stone for us to be realized by other people, but DEI has always been embedded in everything that this country stands on in the world. It's not even a something that we can take for ourselves. It's everywhere. And even when I talk to people or I'm consulting on DEI stuff, I tell people that I'm a DEI hire, but not because I'm African American or Black or a brown person. I'm a DEI hire because I have almost 6 degrees. I am a very forthright person. I'm not a distasteful person, but I'm not always digestible to everybody. And so me being different brings in the diversity. And honestly, people only see color a lot of times when they see DEI, but that's not, what it is. It's more than color. It's education, is level of intellect, is speech, articulation, comprehension, all of those things. And I don't think that we always consider all those things. And as fortunate or as unfortunate as it might be, DEI can never be taken away. It's always going to exist as long as you have people. What does the song say? We're yellow, black, and white. We are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. I mean, we're DEI. We're different. We just need more inclusivity.
How can organizations move beyond performative DEI efforts to create lasting change?
They must integrate it into their core values, policies, practices. This requires leadership commitment, though. Measurable goals. You have to really, truly be measuring something and not things just to check a box. You have to hold people accountable. It's also essential to fostering a culture that allows continuous dialogue and learning around DEI. DEI is not just a concept that you bring in and you say, oh, this is a one pager or a white paper on it. Let's, dive into it and make it great. No, DEI needs innovation as well. You have to be innovative in your efforts and want that to happen for it to be possible.
Now, when I listen to your answer, and now this is a place I really don't want to go, but I think people need to really, really get a grasp as to what you just explained. Now, when we think about where we are right now in these days and times, we're now supposedly, quote unquote, everything is evolved or has a problem because of DEI. Everything is wrong because of DEI. And DEI was supposedly, quote unquote, is something that's just there because, it benefited folk that look like you and I. And so, I mean, kind of like if you can just expound just a little bit more to explain, to those that are listening, especially that what's being put out now in the media when they cover that crap, because it's just wrong. I'm just going to say that's wrong.
Yeah.
Help us to understand a whole lot more about where this is going and why this is being said from your opinion?
I'm going to use an example. For all intents and purposes, our current president is a DEI hire. Now, great or not, he is in fact a DEI hire. He lacks credentials.
Mm-hmm.
He lacks emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
He lacks empathy. He lacks all of the core things that we have as requirements for presidents. He's not even a political person.
Mm-hmm.
And he lacks leadership capacity.
Mm-hmm.
That is a DEI hire, as inappropriate as the majority might assume it is, especially now, also those who voted for him then.
Mm-hmm.
He is in fact a DEI hire.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever impediments or disabilities, are associated or assigned to that, he is in fact a DEI hire. And I think that it is golden to understand it on this side of things. And it's even more golden that he doesn't understand it, but he always downs it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people really start to look into those things, I mean, to be nice about it, he is not the first pick for a president if in fact you were to line him up against every other president that we've had to date.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you consider that, he is diverse in that regard, and we're being equitable by giving him the opportunity and being inclusive by allowing him to even sit in the Oval Office.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that as dysfunctional or unfunctional or conventional as it might be, we have to understand it in that way sometimes to make it make sense for us all. And hopefully one day he gets it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that was a great way of explaining it.
Well, I want you to know I love your answer. And as a matter of fact, I hope you don't mind, but there's some parts of what you just said. I have to use that. I really do. Because you could have said that no better. Because when we talk about DEI, I never even thought of using that term, but he is definitely a DEI hire.
Oh yeah,
Definitely. Oh my God. But anyway, let me move on because I don't want us to get caught up in that craziness.
yes.
But can you share a success story from your DEI advocacy work?
In one of my previous roles, I spearheaded a DEI initiative that resulted in a 6% increase in workforce diversity, around or about 70% improvement in managerial effectiveness. And I did so by embedding DEI into the recruitment, training, and leadership development processes that were in place. We created a more inclusive environment for everybody in the company. I mean, they were ranting and raving about how I didn't strip away what they knew. I just re-engineered or developed what they already had into something that was more of a clear cut process than what they were going through initially. And honestly, I really didn't do much. I just made people understand that there is a fundamental something in here. We have to see what that is, and everybody needs to be on one accord. You can't have your perception of the company's mission here and then another perception of the company's mission here, and you're straddling the fence on all of those things. No, it has to be a clear-cut mission, and you have to abide by that. And until people do that, you really can't move forward in anything. But it worked for them, and I'm glad that they got their numbers up and they are flourishing now for sure.
Wow. So I mean, so do you have you done created a whole bunch of these different projects that's had the same success story for the places that you've worked with?
I do. It's funny, even when I've had not so great bosses or experiences at companies where I was actually an employee and not like a consultant for, it's almost like a bad breakup. They say that I'm great they just can't be with me. And I think sometimes because I'm not a dweller, and a lot of times I've come to realize that people like to dwell in mess or bad whatever. And I'm
Mm,
not that person. I'll talk about it and have a conversation one time, but I'm not going to keep on, jarring through something that, I'm going to have the same opinion. Like I told you at the beginning of the call, king is always king. And if in fact I'm wrong about something, I'll transition my thinking or thought processes around it. But if in fact I'm not, we can talk about it a million one times, but it's not going to change my perception or how I perceive it to be. And I think that a lot of people attempt to do that sometimes. And maybe it's because they're used to dealing with less thick-skinned people. I don't know, but I'm just not that person. And it's benefited me, and I've done great things. And I've said goodbye many times because things just didn't work.
So, what steps can leaders take to address unconscious biases in their organizations?
Leaders must lead by example. Um, and being aware of their own biases and promoting education and unconscious biases is something that is easier said than done, but that's where self-reflection comes in. And that's something that I do in the moment at times, like in the moment coaching. I'll self-reflect on something if in fact I feel like I'm going to respond indifferently or be on the fence about something. You got to implement some kind of blind recruiting processes as well, into some of these companies. And I think a lot of times when you are the hiring manager and you are the onboarding manager and you are all of these things in that process, you have to remove yourself sometimes so that you don't develop biases, because you're so involved in a process in which, sometimes you can delegate certain things. And I think delegation is a big thing that a lot of times we don't do. And inherently you develop biases because you don't delegate things enough. And when your mind is on everything, you don't have enough time to really fulfill the things that you need to, and to fill those voids or holes that breed unconscious bias.
Mm. How can organizations measure the success of their DEI initiatives?
I say go to the people, employee surveys, diversity metrics, retention rates, qualitative feedback. Really get to the nitty gritty of what the employees are thinking. Don't ask for closed-ended questions on a survey. Ask them what they think and look for themes in that after you ask what they think. And if there are a lot of themes that people have this shared opinion on what's going wrong, then we have some work to do. Let's go back to the drawing board. But if in fact those themes vary, we have a company of forward thinkers and thought leaders who might potentially help us move in a similar direction. And I think when considering that, we have to develop strategies that we can move the needle on with certain things in those themes that we see populate at those times.
Hmm. So, what challenges do you see in implementing DEI strategies in today's workplace?
Resistance to change, lack of leadership buy-in, um, honestly, it's the change. People didn't know that it existed always. It being forced into certain companies just to check a box, I think, has been the thing that we've really truly had to overcome. Um, but that requires patience and commitment, um, and a strategic approach, honestly. You got to educate yourself and look at all levels and go into the organization and truly break it down to the bones sometimes and make sure that everybody's reinforced with the way forward.
Now, again, you are definitely you're giving me a whole new shape here as we've because I've had people on before that's talking about DEI, and I know it could be many, many things. I want you to give us your opinion.
Mhm.
When it comes to DEI, are you for or against it, and why?
I am for it because it's inevitable. There is no way around it. when you bring leaders together, you're going to have diversity by default because nobody's going to think the same. And if in fact they do, I don't know how the company sustains at that point. But I'm for it because what we fail to realize is that equity is the true goal. We need equity. We honestly, we need that. That's the true goal. Inclusion is the problem that people have an issue with because diversity is always there. And so we need to rearrange our thought around it. The D shouldn't come first. The inclusion aspect should come first. Diversity is going to come by default. I mean, you put us in the room together. We're two different people, obviously. We're not going to agree on everything. Right. And I think that that is the fundamental issue in which a lot of people have because they think the D stands for, they think the D is a C and it has nothing to do with color. Diversity is something that we all have by default. We, like I said, are the same color, but we probably have very different viewpoints on a list of things. And understanding that diversity is always going to be there, that's not the goal. Diversity is always going to be there. Equity is the goal. We need equity, and inclusion is us giving the opportunity to allow equity to surface. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like I said, I think that we're arguing or conceptually considering this in a very different way a lot of times when the conversation is had about DEI. But I'm for it, and I will never be against it. People can spin the story or, change the acronym however many times they want to, but I know what it means to me. And that's how I am successful in my efforts always, because equity is always the goal.
So with our folk that we target here from the show, which are the underserved and marginalized communities, with the concept in which you just explained DEI, what are some of the most important things that they should take from what you're just saying and learn how to implement?
Know what your end goal is. Understand that fairness or equity is what you want in the end. Understand that inclusion is being given the opportunity. Diversity is going to come by default because you and your friends can go up for 1,000,001 jobs or establish 1,000,001 companies. And it's not rocket science. We're going to have difference of opinions, but you have to have a common goal in mind for it to really, truly work. And equity should be that goal. And as long as you understand that and firmly grasp that and hold on to it and go after it, you'll be successful. Because fairness is what you want, and it's not only going to benefit you, it's going to be a domino effect for those and all those that come after you and before you, and and so on and so forth.
So how do you approach educating others about the importance of equity and inclusion?
Honestly, I engage in open and honest conversations. And when conversations go awry or go left or whatever, I use data to illustrate the benefits of DEI. And from my time working with it, even before I classified myself as an advocate or consultant in that space, I was always doing it. Because again, I had that voice and I looked at those people who were, not getting the opportunity or being left behind. And I always tell people it's important to connect with DEI efforts and both personal values and organizational performance. You can only gain support and understanding through explaining all of those things and making sure that you're having the conversations. And a lot of times the conversations are being steered away from or brushed under the rug or whatever people do with them, but you got to have them or else you're going to be in the same place. Even if you feel like you're progressing, there's going to be some regression there somewhere for sure, if in fact you're not having those conversations.
Now, I love staying in the present because, staying in the present, basically helps you to stay focused and helps you to stay forward. Now, I want to go back and I want to ask you a different question for where we've been so far with DEI.
Mhm.
And I want to ask you if you can help us to understand when DEI was first implemented. That was somewhere around the early part of the 20th century, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So, what happened in between, let's say, 19th century, coming into the 20th century, and coming in here into the 21st century, that has made DEI important, but now here in the present is being stripped away? What happened then to now that it was needed?
Well, I'll first like to say that more people who look like us found their voice,
Hmm.
which created an issue for people who didn't look like them or us.
Hmm.
I'll also say that how we once measured it, when we found our voice, it was being measured differently, not only by us, but by the people who opposed it.
Hmm.
And in that difference of measurement, I feel that a lot of people or other people who oppose it, um, they find it problematic because they are starting to see us and realize that although we were always there, we're not just seen and not heard anymore. We're being heard and we're being very vocal about it. And this is a different generation of individuals coming up and ratting and raving and finding ways to market it. And they don't see the benefit is totally for them anymore. It's not just a fad or something they can do to, gain whatever workforce credits they can get for, hiring people. I think that now it's working to their disadvantage, and that's why honestly it's different and for some people problematic, which is why they want it to go away.
So, now I have one last follow up for that, because when you say that, oh my God, I mean, it just popped like 15 million things in my mind. And I'm gonna say something about what I do here for this platform. And
Mhm.
so maybe you can maybe there's some things that maybe you can help me to iron it out so the creases really look sharp.
Okay.
Um, when I think about a lot of things that's happening, especially from a media perspective,
Hmm.
when I started this platform for one reason, and that is I wanted to make sure that people that look like you and I, will always have a voice, and that we will have a voice of reason that would always inspire and motivate. But I wanted to also make sure that I build, uplift, and expand the communities where people that look like us, can learn what to do and how to make those things happen. Now, when we talk about, like media outlets and media situations,
Hmm.
because eventually that's what we will be evolving into, such a media outlet. My thing is, because the purpose and the focus is to build, uplift, and connect our communities. Now, of course, we come in many hues around this
Hmm.
world because we are the majority of the folk around this world, 98%. My thing to you is this. Um, do you think creating outlets, or media outlets, that's basically more so um, telling our stories, telling things that are happening around the world in our communities for people to be more informed of? Do you think that in itself is a good thing or a bad thing? Because it's going to be most likely or probably be telling the story from an opposite perspective. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing when it comes to equity and inclusion?
If stories aren't told, then they'll forever be unknown. um,
Mhm.
I think the more the merrier, honestly.
Mhm.
But when it comes to that, I'm by default a researcher now, and I critically think about everything. And I think about the themes that will come out of those stories being told. And if you hear it from multiple avenues, from multiple people, from multiple perspectives, I think that there is a benefit in it for everyone. I've come to realize and associate now with the thought process that people that are other than me or look differently than I do, or even that look like me who are just less informed, are in fact just less informed. And it's because they didn't have an avenue or an outlet to, or silo, whatever you want to classify it as, to go and gather or garner information that could be beneficial and useful to them. I'll give a really, really quick but great story. When I went into undergrad at Kansas State University, I was there that Friday. My roommate didn't get in until that Saturday or Sunday morning. I can't remember exactly the day. I won't say his name, but he was a person from Omaha, Nebraska. And he was not the same color, hue, or anything as me. I was asleep on my top bunk. You know, they have like the little bunk and the studio thing underneath it. And him and his mom and his dad, I think, was out in the car, but they were coming in like throw off in the room. And he saw that I had my side set up. I'm a little OCD like that. So everything was set up on my side like in one day. So he actually did come on Saturday. It was like 7 something in the morning. And when he came into the room, he said, "Oh my God, Mom, he's black." And obviously I'm a light sleeper. So when I heard it, I was like, let me just stay under here. And so I didn't pop up or get up abruptly or anything. I just stayed under there and acted like I was asleep. And obviously time went on. I had to eventually get up. And so I got up very slowly, and they were out of the room at this point in time. But as I opened the door, they were right there. And his mom, the nicest person in the world, I think she was like a nurse or something. She was like, "Hi, you know, I'm such and such, and this is such and such." And I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you guys." They were like, "We're going to get out your way in a moment. We'll let you guys, you know, be to yourselves. We're going to come back tomorrow and take you guys out to dinner if you're open to it." I was like, "Oh, sure." Time went on. Me and him became the closest of roommates and the closest of friends. We had some classes and stuff together. He was actually a year ahead of me, though. He had transferred in from another school. He actually told me, as we were walking home, I didn't drink or anything at this point in time. We were coming home from a party that we had gone to for some of his friends. They had kegs and stuff everywhere. He left because he saw that I wasn't, you know, having a great time. And when we were on our walk back to our dorm, he told me, "Man, I'm so sorry. I freaking love you. You know, when I came in, I was nervous, you know, to have a black roommate." He's like, "Because I'd never come in such close proximity with a black person." He was like, being from Omaha, Nebraska, you know, I very rarely saw them in my school. You know, I might pass them at a store or something, but it was never a conversation had. None of them lived in my neighborhood, so on and so forth. And I thought to myself, well, how can you live in a world like that? Because that was not my experience being from Illinois. And I came to the conclusion in that moment that people that are different are truly, in fact, different. They have different experiences. They have different upbringings. They have different outcomes. They have different everything. And I had to take that into consideration before I found hate or disdain or anything in my heart, especially when interacting with people who I knew that I would not be able to, you know, get around or just exist or coexist with. You know, that wasn't an option for me growing up or ever. And so I found in that moment that you just had to be open and understand that sometimes it's the lack of knowledge. And if the stories aren't being told, then in fact, you will be in the dark about a list of things, and you'll come off as oblivious or stupid or unknowing or whatever. And unfortunately, it's to their demise. But there's not enough people like you and I who are open to creating those outlets or media forums where they can get another story or perspective, because hopefully there's people that don't look like us listening now, because it may shape the way in which they think moving forward.
That's very true. And I can just imagine, though. I'll tell you, Kansas is a place that I've never been, but I will tell you, I've done an enormous amount of research on Kansas because I'm doing a book series, right? And the book series, of course, it takes place in Topeka, Kansas.
Oh, wow.
And so I found, an enormous amount of research about that place. But what I found is that the area in which I'm using as a setting is a place called College Hill, which is a subsection of Topeka.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty much, there's a pretty big number of an enormous amount of this one area,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of like has, this story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of people, when they first got the first book, College Hill, they thought I was talking about the TV series.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's a real place.
Yeah.
And I think now that some people have taken the liberty to really look this up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think once they found this area to be real, then I also give them the second piece of connecting Brown v. Board of Education with
wow.
Thurgood Marshall, which took place there in Topeka.
Mm.
So again, is another place that was what it was, but it's very historical. So at any rate, but I've never been to Kansas, and every time I think I want to go to a place like that, I don't know, I just think of sundown. I'm not gonna lie to you, I think of sundown because there's been a lot of places, that I've been on many travels, seriously. And a lot of these places, you more than just get the vibe, but you can see the setting and it tells you, be careful.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, I just, I don't know. I just found it interesting to know that you went to Manhattan, Kansas to go to K-State University.
Mm.
And, just to hear now you're actually the second person that looked like you and I that's actually been to Kansas.
Yeah.
I'm not lying to you. I mean, but it's like you what you just said though is two different experiences.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I mean that's interesting, and I more than appreciate that story because what that does again, it helps me to shed more light, as I say, about how I want to continue to grow this platform and this outlet.
Yeah.
Because it's just very, very important, but not wanting to have the intentions of throwing out something that's like fear mongering, because that's something I don't do. But sometimes for a lot of people, the truth can be fearing.
Oh yeah.
And so, I think it's then you have to come to that point where you have to realize, in the realities, this is what it is. Because I don't like to, play on the feelings and emotions of people.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So what role do allies play in advancing DEI initiatives?
I feel that allies are essential in amplifying marginalized voices, advocating for change and challenging the status quo. They play a major role in the processes, a crucial role in the processes, honestly, because in holding others accountable, if you don't have allies, there may not be enough of us to do that. And so ensuring that DEI efforts are sustained, you have to have allies to help sustain that. People who believe in it that may not believe that it's beneficial to them solely, but in fact are allies and advocates for you throughout the process of enduring whatever you have to go through or a part of to get whatever the end goal is. I think the allies are essential to the bigger picture.
So how do you keep yourself motivated in the face of resistance to DEI efforts?
I simply say focus on my long-term vision. Honestly, I always think about the positives, even when the negatives are impacting me greatly. DEI initiatives can have substantial benefits of growth and individualistic opportunities for organizations if in fact that is something that you hold close. You have to truly believe in it. And what do they say? If it was easy, everybody would do it. That's kind of the mind or thought process that I have around it. And so I find motivation in seeing small successes, honestly, even when those successes are being rocked down in the middle of the company. You have to truly be in those meetings and grit your teeth or whatever, get you through that moment to understand that the bigger picture is going to be the bigger benefit.
So how does DEI advocacy intersect with leadership practices?
I feel that effective leadership involves creating an environment where all employees feel valued, respected, and empowered. I think that DEI advocacy aligns with leadership by fostering a culture of inclusion, empathy, and shared responsibility, honestly. And that, to me, is what creates change.
Now, this we're gonna transition, okay, over to your dissertation. Now, first of all, I mean, the timing is like kind of like it's perfect, but because this is Women's History Month, and so the thing is what I found to be intriguing is with you doing this, exploring how African American women navigate their entrepreneurial journeys. Now, I think for such a long time, from a historical perspective, African American women have been on their entrepreneurial journeys for a long time and have been very, very successful. Before we get going into this, can you tell us what is it that made you decide to write your dissertation on this?
You know what? I was compelled to write my dissertation on the intersection of race and gender in entrepreneurship generally. And it was going to be on African American men and their disenfranchisement in the corporate forum.
Okay.
I was told that I would be too biased to such a topic because I am first and foremost a person of color, a person of the global majority, and I am also a man. And so I thought to myself, well, let me just listen to this person because they actually already have their PhD. So let me just make sure that I'm taking heed, and I am not going to reinvent the wheel ever. And so I'm gonna test it out and see. But I thought, well, the easiest transition would be to women, and I pay homage to women all the time because I was raised by a single mother who is my hero, Shiro, all those things. And I have a lot of great women in my life and family who have been very successful in their own efforts. And so I thought, well, let me do it on African American women who often face unique challenges. And songs and quotes all over the world say they are the most disrespected. And so I was like, well, let me look into this. And when I did that, I obviously completed my dissertation on African American women, but I told that professor, you were right, but you were wrong. I am more biased to the opposite sex than I am to the same sex because, in fact, yes, I am a Black man, but I found that there were so many biases that came out because I understood who women were from my perspective and for what I saw them to be. I didn't know all of the backstories and histories and stuff that I would, come into over time. And it was just the most fulfilling thing ever. And so I found that they were one of the marginalized groups of individuals that contributed the most to our economy. So I thought, well, hey, who better to do it on? Especially considering that there was such a gap in the research and literature out there. So I thought, well, let me just add to this and be an alien voice throughout the process. I did it. And everything that I've published since has been on them.
Okay. So why so can you tell us in particular, why was it the African American women entrepreneurs that you focused on?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Why is it that it was the African American women entrepreneurs that the focus went to directly?
Because I've been an entrepreneur for so long. and I knew that with doing that, that I would, get down to the nitty gritty on all the other things, women in leadership and business, and also other races of women that just were in fact not African American. And I knew that I would go through an array of processes to get to what my goal was. And so I thought, what better way to do it? Entrepreneurship is a list of things, and I learned a slew of information. And so I thought that I think I picked the right thing.
Well, I'm sure you did, because but first of all, before I ask you this next question, where is it published? Because I definitely would love to get a copy of that. Where is that published?
I can actually send you one, but it's published on ProPress right now. I've been saying for quite some time that I was going to actually strip it down and do a book on it, but since I've completed my dissertation almost 5 years ago now, I've just been running and running and running. But I can send you a link and stuff so you can see it.
Oh, I would appreciate that, because of course we'll have you back on the show, of course, but it's like, for something that strong, because I'm sure that the points being made are points clearly are contradictory to what's in the atmosphere. Let's just make it that way.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure it's totally contradictory, and the reason why I say that is because I think there's so many ways to gather strength, but to know that from a historical context, to having to suffer through the many things, it was not just them, but it was more so them, because they had to watch an enormous amount of trauma. But to still maintain through all these times, and to still get to this point where they are today, that shows more than just strength. That's will, that's intensity, that's the determination, that's the focus, that's the everything.
Yes,
that people should be taking today as how to stay steadfast.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So what are the most significant barriers African American women face in entrepreneurship?
There are so many things that came out of that study, but to list a few: access to capital, systemic racism, gender bias are the most significant. But navigating social and professional networks, I think, was the most difficult, and not having a mentor or anybody who looked like them to bring them up. Actually, a very fun fact: most of my participants, they said that their coaches or their indirect advocates or advisors were people who were not only the opposite race, but the opposite sex of them. They were white men. And that was like wow to me, because I'm like, And then I was also told that imposter syndrome set in like nobody's business. And so they stood in their own way sometimes. And then also, not only did they not know anybody who looked like them, but they had never really truly had conversations with white women who were in their same positions. It was just like no common ground there at all. And not because they attempted to and they were turned down. They just said that was just something that they never even thought to do. I mean, all of the participants, that was like one of the major themes. And I thought, wow, that's interesting.
Now, what's interesting about that is, with the African-American woman being at the top of the gene pool, the white man is at the very bottom of the gene pool. Now, how is it that she found him to be the biggest nemesis?
You know what? That is a thought to be conceived. I found it most interesting, and in an effort not to steer or lead them throughout the process or utilize any of my bias to get over that hump, I just say, you know what? I'm just going to take what you told me, because it was interesting to me as well, and they thought it was bizarre. So I don't even know if they truly knew the reason as to why. I think that individual was just the person most open and susceptible and also conveniently located at those times. And they bridged this bond, and it just kind of went on from there. And only one of them told me that. The other ones just expressed that, that was the individual who assisted them throughout the process, or who motivated them, or coached them in whatever way or facet that they did. But none of the other ones really dove into the question. They said, my coach or advisor was a Caucasian guy, was her exact words.
Wow. Oh my God. I really can't wait to read this, because now I just want you to know, see, now I don't want to come across as being a crazy person, or you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
I don't want to come across as that kind of person, but let me just tell you why that's so intriguing to me. Is because this is like, well, I'll just put it like this. It's like, this is where, again, where things that have happened for manipulation for so long has actually tripped people up into believing that what's really at the bottom is at the top.
Oh, yeah.
And while these Jedi mind tricks that have been played have been used so far over time, that is basically is having the influence today that it does not deserve.
Oh, yeah.
And see, this is where I think, when you sent me that information about, what you did your dissertation on, is that I want you to know that I promise you, I went for like 30 minutes to an hour trying to just dissect that title, not do anything else until I decide to go and look further. But I want to dissect that title, because it's like that in itself, it speaks volumes.
Oh, yeah.
It speaks volumes. And see, this is the kind of work, this is just from me to you. And so I know you already know that you got the PhD, I just got a master's. But my thing is, this is truly, for today's times, what not just men, but women need to look at, because there's something here for all of us to get some nuggets from.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
How do these women define the measured success in their entrepreneurial journeys?
What I came to conclude was that success is often defined by personal achievement, community impact, and financial sustainability. Many measure success not only through profitability, though, but they also do it by how well they contribute to their community and create opportunities for other people. An individual who I studied throughout my dissertation, she is a restaurateur now. And I mean, she literally started from her food truck and has grown into a multi-million-dollar business in Atlanta, Georgia. I can't say the name for obvious reasons, but let's just say that it's vegan food. And she is an individual who went against the grain and truly maximized her potential by just what she had within. Call it bootstrapping or whatever. But they measure success by how well and how much they can give back to others, their communities, their families. Women are nurturers naturally. That's what we're told. I'm not a woman. I can't, say that to be true or not, but my experience with them, that is what I experienced. And I think that it transitions into how they define success as well, how much more they can do to nurture or build wherever they are, whoever they are, and however they can, do so. I think that they define it by doing that, and at level times 10. And all of them had that. It literally came out just like that.
Yeah, but just to also just think about, as you're just saying, to be able to do something like that here in the Deep South and it becomes successful. We're talking about the exponent of 10. And if you're talking about the exponent of 10, then that means that it's pretty much, it's like wildfire.
Oh, yeah.
And so apparently she's found the niche
Yeah,
to make it connect and to grow it from the inside out.
for sure. That I think the song "That Girl Is on Fire" will be a very appropriate
Mhm.
association there because, and in a record time, she did this in less than a decade, less than
Mhm.
probably 7 years, I think now.
Mhm.
And so, yeah.
So, what role does community support play in their entrepreneurial endeavors?
Community support is vital. Providing emotional encouragement, networking opportunities, and access to resources, I think, is essential and crucial for them to move forward in their efforts. But strong community ties for anybody, honestly, can help navigate challenges and provide a foundation of growth, in my experience.
Mhm. And so, did any stories from your research particularly resonate with you?
Um, well, this is actually kind of the same story that I just express. That individual in particular, she started a business to provide resources to individuals, and it catapulted into something that exceeded her expectation, anybody's expectation, honestly. And her journey highlights the power of entrepreneurship, truly, to create social change. I mean, she did something with a very niche group of eaters or individuals, and it has been a catalyst for her personally and her community. I mean, people who weren't even in that arena of industry of eating or food, they indulge and do so endlessly now because she literally tapped into something that was so desirable to the point where you didn't even know that you desired it until you experienced it.
Mhm. So, look, I'm gonna. I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time, but we're going to transition over to we do Black History 365,
Good.
and so for you, you said an influence on your life and your career was both Martin Luther King Jr. as well as Malcolm X.
Mhm.
And I want you to tell our audience, how did the teachings of MLK and Malcolm X shape your worldview?
I was brought up by a father who thought that it was crucial for us to understand and know Black history. So I watched things like Roots and stuff growing up. Black history was 365, is 365 for him. So MLK taught me the power of nonviolent resistance because doing the work that I have done for quite some time now, you know, I'm a human, so I have emotions and everything, and I can have a temper with the best of them. But I had to learn resistance and resilience, and the importance of hope and reconciliation, obviously, as well. But Malcolm X emphasized the need for self-determination, pride, and standing up against injustice. Um, Together, I feel like their teaching shaped my commitment to justice and equity.
Okay. What just happened here? Okay. Hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what elements of their leadership styles inspire you most?
MLK's ability to inspire through peaceful resistance and compassion, combined with Malcolm X's unapologetic stance on self-empowerment and action, I would like to say influenced me the most because it exemplifies the balance of strength and grace.
And so, how do you incorporate the principles of MLK and Malcolm X into your work?
Well, as good or as bad as I do at times, I strive to embody MLK's vision of beloved community by fostering collaboration and inclusivity. While also embracing Malcolm X's call for self determination and standing firm against injustice. has truly shaped and molded me into the individual that you see before you.
So, what lessons from their lives do you share with others?
I go back to resilience and the commitment to justice, the importance of understanding multiple perspectives and that are central to both their lives. I think people assume a lot of times that Malcolm X and MLK were so different. I like to believe that they weren't. And I share how their examples show that leadership can come in any form. And you can still be revered and get very similar results in your actions.
So, how do you think their legacies are relevant to today's social and racial justice movements?
MLK's call for nonviolent protests, I know that we all know that to be, I mean, whether you are black, white, blue, or purple, we see that being played out endlessly now. It remains crucial. While I feel that Malcolm X's emphasis on self-empowerment continues to inspire individuals and communities to continue to demand justice on their own terms.
So, can you share a personal anecdote about how their philosophies influenced you?
During a critical juncture in my career, I was facing pushback on a diversity initiative. I found strength in MLK's teaching, perseverance for sure, and nonviolence, because it is something that infuriated me because they could not have been more wrong. And not just from my perspective, but from a factual perspective, like historic perspectives. And I'm like, I can't stand behind anything like that. And at that point, I didn't care about anything, the money that was being paid or anything. But I also took into consideration Malcolm X's approach of standing firm in my values, which helped me push forward in the initiative for sure. And honestly, at the end of it all, they learned a lot. I learned a little about myself in that process. And I knew that my voice was something to stand on. And if in fact somebody is hiring me to do a job, only thing I can do is be me and do that. But I had to be resilient and resist all of the havoc and headache that they were bringing. But we all made it work, and it came out to be very successful in the end.
So, what aspects of MLK's vision for a beloved community resonate with you?
The ideal community where all are valued and can live in peace resonates deeply, and hopefully it does for everybody. His emphasis on love and reconciliation and justice provides, I think, a blueprint in a way for how we should all be working together to achieve a collective well-being, although that is not always what we get. But I think that the blueprint is still there if we use it to our advantage.
And so, how does Malcolm X's emphasis on self-determination influence your leadership approach?
Malcolm X's philosophy, I think it reinforces the importance of standing firm in one's belief and taking responsibilities for my own action and success. It encouraged me to empower others and to help them recognize the importance of their own potential to shape their own destiny. And that's a lived and tried and true thing.
So, how do you balance the different approaches of MLK and Malcolm X in your advocacy work?
I believe that I balance their approaches by advocating for both peaceful collaborative solutions, even in the eye of resistance. And I think a strong stance on self-empowerment and action. Both are necessary for progress, honestly.
And so, if you could speak with MLK or Malcolm X today, what would you ask them?
So many questions, but first and foremost, I would ask them how they envision the next steps in the fight for justice and equality. Not equity, but equality. And then I would ask what advice would they offer to current leaders navigating a complex and divided world.
Mhm. So, that was our last question, and I just want to give you the opportunity now to tell our audience if you've got some closing remarks. That is how they can connect with you via website, socials, whatever have you, and just some words of wisdom and thoughts that they should take from today's show. From you.
Well, if you guys would like to connect with me, you can connect with me at King Imani on LinkedIn, at Dr. King Will Do on Instagram, and at projectthestandard.com. That's my website. But closing remarks, I like to say the best way to make dreams come true is to wake up. And in a world where you could be anything, just be yourself. I find that to be one of the things that is attributed to most of my success up until this point in life. And I find it most imperative that we find out who we are before we attempt to go out and lead others. And knowing who you are, I think, is truly the best thing in the world. It's like golden. And so lean into that, and your efforts will never be in vain.
Well, I want to thank you for having for giving us some of your time to be here tonight to help to educate our audience on a whole lot of things when it comes to leadership, when it comes to diversity, because that's very, very important, as well as equity. And I definitely, well, first and foremost, we would definitely love to have you back. Can we set a time, where we can actually get you back on the show?
Yes, we certainly can.
I definitely appreciate that. And so, for those of you that are watching the show tonight, Dr. King Imani has just given us a lot of understanding as to how organizational leadership, how DEI, and the importance of understanding a historical context when it comes to entrepreneurship. Some of the things that you should do, some of the things you should not do, but also how to have patience. A lot of times people do things where they will do what's necessary to get you out of character, to cause you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. But when you think about it, those people have an opportunity to take the biggest thing and the best thing from you, and that's your voice.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to let people take our voices. But what we are going to do is we are going to continue to push forward where we actually build these communities like we're initially trying to get started. We're going to take this power where we're going to be able to be functional without folks trying to find a way in to take things away from you or to find out what you're doing and sabotage you from within. You've got to be careful. This is where emotional intelligence and critical thinking comes into play. Because if I have an agenda and if I can get to you and I can take that away from you, then that means that I've got everything that you started. So for those of you that are watching on a YouTube channel, if you have not yet subscribed and also hit the notifications button, I ask that you please do that and pledge your support to us, please. We definitely would appreciate it because as we grow larger, we grow better. And together, we're very, very strong, and we definitely need your support as we get bigger and stronger. Thank you again, Dr. Imani, for being here. Thank you all for watching on the YouTube channel. And I will tell you, please, if you have that time tomorrow, we definitely Would appreciate you guys coming back to catch us again tomorrow night, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we have another great episode of America in Black and White, the hottest podcast in America at this time. So please pledge your support and be a part of this growth, because it's here for all of us to get better. Thank you again, Dr. Imani, and we will see you next time, and y'all have a great evening.